A sales leader looks at the sales team and decides we need sales training. But one of the real challenges is trying to figure out exactly what we want to train on. Should we train on closing or discovery or presentation skills? Maybe it's prospecting. What is going to move the needle exactly? Or maybe we're just asking the wrong question. This is Sales Untraining, a very different kind of sales podcast. 3 out of 4 salespeople are failing. They're falling short of their revenue. Why doesn't sales training work? That's what this sales podcast is about. It's your weekly sales strategy guide designed to rewire your sales brain. Hey, welcome to Sales Untraining. Great to have you on board. I'm Kelly Riggs. It's your weekly sales strategy guide designed to completely rewire your sales brain. Hope you'll like and subscribe to the podcast and certainly share it with people that you know as we take apart the systemic issues and challenges associated with sales training. And in this particular episode, we're going to talk about how we decide to sales train and when do we need sales training and what's it all about, and some of the standard scenarios that we run into that have all kinds of issues associated with them. I mean, the typical scenario is one of two things. The first one's easy. It's the annual sales meeting, right? So we're having our annual sales meeting, our kickoff or our end of the year, one of those. And we decide that, part of that's got to be some sales training because obviously, we do some product review, new product rollout, marketing. We have presentations on numbers and all that. Maybe we do a awards dinner banquet presentation of some kind. But while we've got everybody together, let's do some sales training. All right, let's take advantage of the opportunity. So we do, and we go around the room like, what do we need to train on? Typical scenario number 1. Typical scenario number 2. We're setting in a staff meeting or an executive meeting or a meeting of all the sales leaders with the CEO, the owner, the general manager, something of that sort. And we're talking about the fact that sales are lagging. Maybe margins are being compressed a bit. We're struggling. We've had some turnover. Whatever the case may be, we're in that roundtable discussion. And someone suggests, usually a sales manager or a sales VP, something like that, says, the thing is, we need sales training. We need to organize some sales training. And there's some discussion about what that looks like, and is that true, and is that a good step? And eventually we arrive at this idea that yes, we need to get some sales training. So we put something together, and then we ask, what do we need to train on? Well, I want to suggest to you, maybe, just maybe, that's the wrong question. At the very least, it's out of sequence, because we talk about it's like all the planning that I see people do. Typically, they jump right into the brainstorming phase of that idea of planning. They jump into ideation and thinking about things that we could do and wow, it'd be great if we could do this, that, and the other thing. But we really don't put it into any real context. And many times, I think we're not answering the right question at first. First, what is the problem? And why does that particular problem need to be addressed? It's so easy to generalize about sales training. Now, stay with me because there's a lot of depth to what we're going to talk about here, and it needs to be considered if you're going to get the most out of the significant amount of money that you're going to invest in the sales training process, whatever that may look like. Is it bringing in an expert? Is it bringing in a speaker? Is it arranging some classroom training over the course of several months? A series of regional meetings. I mean, there's a whole lot of ways to go about doing this. The question is, why? All right, because it's very easy to look at the big picture and say something's not right and immediately decide sales training is the answer. I'm not suggesting it's not. I'm just suggesting that a lack of real investigation into root cause is really going to create some problems. First off, what is the problem? If it's a compression problem on margins, we've gone from 43% gross down to 39, 40, something like that. We're seeing a gradual erosion of margins. What is the problem? I mean, there needs to be a deep dive analysis of exactly what that problem looks like and why it needs to be addressed. And quite frankly, that often doesn't happen. It's gut reaction. It's gut fit. We need sales training. I mean, obviously, It's associated with sales. We need sales training. But is it? I mean, there could be a lot of things. And by the way, let's just assume that it is for the sake of argument. How do you address that in actual manner of training? What do you do? What do you look at? Well, I know many of you have got several ideas in your head, but which one of those makes sense? And how do we sequence it? And to what degree do we work with it? But what is the specific evidence of the problem? Tell me the evidence of the problem. Well, it's a margin issue, okay? Is it systemic? Is it across all individuals, or is it isolated to 2 or 3 individuals? Is it all across all product lines, or is it associated with a specific set of product lines? There's more details that have to come up. We can look at big numbers and try to come up with ideas. It's very similar to asking this question. Your football team just lost this weekend 23-10. What do they need to do? What do they need to address? What do they need to fix? Yeah, I know they need to score more points. Brilliance, right? But why didn't we score points? Because there could be any number of reasons. Maybe we just flat out weren't the best team. They far outclass us on the field in terms of talent. Typically not true, but maybe their game plan was better than ours. Maybe we turned it over in the red zone 3 times. Maybe we were struggling to complete some passes that normally we would, but our quarterback was just a little off target. Maybe our line couldn't block their D-line, and we couldn't get back on the field. We were 3 and out time and again, right? There's a lot of ideas that go into this. So which one needs to be addressed in practice next week? Which ones need to be addressed strategically? You know what the answer would be on the sales side? It would sound something like this on the football side. Well, we just need more practice. We need some practice. We need to get out and work on some things. Folks, it's not helpful. What we're trying to address is specific issues and change behaviors to create different outcomes. And that's a whole nother ball of wax. You know, is this the real problem, or is it your best guess? Right? Many times we don't even go past that barrier. It's like, oh, the problem is. Okay, is that the actual problem? I mean, root cause analysis is a thing for a reason, is finding out, well, here's the problem. Well, why is that happening? Well, because of this. Well, why is that happening? Because of that. Well, why is that happening? And then we finally find out that, you know, the fact of the matter is we don't have a sales training problem. We have a hiring problem. Or much more frequently, we have a coaching problem. We have sales leaders who are not effective at working with individual reps, coaching them up, helping them improve their skills, helping them create confidence of their ability to do the job effectively. And yet it's very easy for the sales leader to say, well, the problem is sales training. Companies got to invest in sales training. Can't say that I disagree with that, but clearly sales training is a problem, and that's why we're having this podcast. Because sales training apparently is not working. And by the way, root cause, it's not because we don't know how to train salespeople. It's because oftentimes we don't put that sales training into any kind of context whatsoever, and we do it incorrectly, and we do it systemically wrong. And while we're investing the money, we're not getting the throughput and the output on the other side. See the problem? It's just too simple to say, sales problem, sales training. Doesn't work that way. Right? Those are the why considerations. Why this problem? Why attack it this way? Is this the actual problem? The other side is the how problem. It's the how question. The how question is, well, if we're going to have sales training, exactly how should we do it? Should we do it in a one-off meeting? Should we do it in a series of lectures and seminars? Should we use computer-based training? We're going to use Zoom, web-based webinars. You know, what's the approach? Because it matters. But more importantly than that, one of the things that I frequently observe is people aren't learning, they're just being trained. Yeah, there's a difference between training and learning. And how do you ensure that your people are actually learning the material, implementing the various things that they've been exposed to, changing their exact habits? When you talk about the how considerations, there's so many things to look at. One of those is, are you training in concepts or specific applications? Are you putting it into context in the real world, or are we just looking at things in general? It happens all the time. We've had training. We check the box. Therefore, we should see margins start to normalize, but they don't. And we wonder what happened. You know what the frequent response to that is? Clearly, training doesn't work. Right? And even though I do sales untraining, and even though I claim that sales training doesn't work, it's not that it actually doesn't work. It's that we do it completely wrong. Now, there's a whole series of reasons why. There's a whole set of systemic explanations for this. In fact, the matter is, you can't just take one of them and fix it. You have to address a whole lot of issues. That, my friends, is why most people are unwilling to undertake what it does take to transform a sales organization. It's simply too much work. I mean, the cost-benefit analysis in some people's heads, way too much investment, way too much work, too long of a time period. What I need is a Band-Aid. What I need is a quick fix. I need a silver bullet. Let's get a world-class sales trainer in here and let's do a half day. Well, a lot of problems with that. One of those is something that psychologists call the forgetting curve. The forgetting curve. Psychologists tell us that any new information that we take in within 1 hour, you've forgotten 50% already. In today's day and age, that might be ambitious, actually, because we've got so many distractions and so many things that occupy our attention, smartphones and social media and email and every other thing in the world. But in 1 hour, you've forgotten 50%. In 1 day, it's 70%. In 1 week, according to psychologists, it's 90%. How you go about training is very, very important, and how you reinforce and repeat the things that they learn over and over in order to create behavioral change is far more important than anything. And if you don't have a sales leader who can coach and who can reinforce and who is in the field observing and working with an individual representative, no matter what you expose them to in the very best sales training, the chances that it sticks, that it's remembered, that it's actually implemented, and that we change behaviors becomes incrementally smaller and smaller over time. No plan going in, no plan coming out means that that enormous amount of money that you invested in that sales training is wasted. What we rely on is our top level salespeople who just seem to have the drive and the initiative and the persistence and the wherewithal to take something that they learn and, regardless of what anybody else does, to integrate it into what they do. You've got some of those people. You probably were one or are one, but not everyone is like that. Some people need coaching. They need repetition. They need development. And if you don't have a sales leader who is dialed into that, and it's a part of the pre-training plan, the post-training plan, and then they're not out there helping, then it really becomes a problem. You're investing a load of money for very little benefit. I want you to think about that. And then finally, when you talk about the how considerations, how are they going to consistently implement this in a day-to-day basis? Are they going to have a specific plan and identify specific prospects or customers where they're going to implement whatever you've taught them in the sales training? The chances are no. And I say that because after 18 years, I've seen it so many times. It takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of emotional intensity to move an organization even a little bit, but to move them substantially, to create dynamic changes in results is a big undertaking. And yet we continue to throw money at sales training and just wonder why it's not working as well as it should. Well, that's one. That's one of the reasons. Hey, coming up next, 3 very important considerations when you do decide to do sales training. Hey, thanks for making Sales Untraining your first listen of the week. And if you find something you like, if you hear something that's interesting, I hope you'll share it with somebody you know. You can find out more about me at bizlockerroom.com or email me, Kelly@bizlockerroom.com. Now back to the show. you're basically tearing up $100 bills and throwing them in the trash can. You're paying someone a lot of money, somebody very capable, somebody very good at what they do, to get minimal impact. If you don't have a sales leader who's capable of reinforcing the very things that you're training on, and if you don't make it a part of the plan following the training to do exactly that, how good is it? How effective is it going to be? I mean, do you even measure the impact of your sales training? Or do you just check a box? Hey, welcome back. Sales Untraining. Again, I'm Kelly Riggs, your weekly sales strategy guide designed to do one thing: completely rewire your sales brain to think about how you do sales training and to think about doing it quite differently than you're doing now. Why? Well, because apparently it's not working very well. Well, the methodology, the approach, and how we do it. Clearly, we know what makes successful salespeople, but consistently producing successful salespeople, we don't seem to be doing that all that well in corporate America, despite roughly $700 million in investment in sales training every year. And this one should really give you some indication as to why that's the case, because we jump into the idea of sales training with very little thought process, very little assessment. Typically, it's very high level and we come to a quick conclusion. Typically, we believe that if we've got problem A, then we've got sales training as a solution. And as we talked about in the first segment, many times that very slow and shallow approach to what the real problems are and what the impact of those problems are and what expectations we would have coming out of sales training to see changes that would actually move the needle. Many times, most of the time in my experience, doesn't happen. Doesn't happen at all. So what I want to do is give you 3 things that you really need to think carefully through when you actually get to the point when you're going to do sales training. If you're going to do it in an annual sales meeting or over the course of months, or you're going to do, bi-monthly Zoom meetings, whatever your application is, there's some things to think about. Here's the first one, and that is, obviously, not all sales training is going to impact all of your salespeople specifically the same way. They don't have the same need. I mean, if you graph 10 salespeople across a scale of how effective are they in a specific sales skill, you're going to have a whole lot of variety. Let's just take one: prospecting. Now, it's possible if you've got 10 salespeople, all 10 of them are terrible at prospecting. I doubt it. You probably have 1 or 2, maybe 3 that, have some reasonable acumen in prospecting or do it very well or really enjoy it. But you've got some people who have about 300 excuses about why they didn't get back to prospecting this quarter, this year, whenever. And so, they need it far worse. But what is it about prospecting that you're going to train on? Because you could have mindset issues. You could have structural issues. You could have planning issues. You could have people who don't know how to actually identify, research, and target specific opportunities effectively. Many people, when they start prospecting, they don't go after the more extensive opportunities. Don't hear me saying whale hunting. I mean, just get in the middle somewhere. Good-sized opportunities, but not Moby Dick. But they're all down here playing in the shallow pond. They're in the shallow end of the pool, and they're doing their prospecting for the smaller accounts that, even if they were successful, really does not move the needle at all. So, I mean, there's a lot of problems here. There's a lot of things to address. If you're not breaking that down and assessing it by individual salesperson, you don't even know how to target that sales training and to come up in specific pieces of the training and say, this applies more to you, or here, or in this application or that application. The fact is, we're way more generalized in sales training. Think about sports training. When we do training, coaching, practice in football, my favorite example, because I'm a huge football fan, we don't have practice for the entire team. I mean, we call it that, and there's an application where we have both offense and defense scrimmaging against one another to practice, but every position coach on the field is looking specifically at their position and more specifically at the skills that are being implemented at any given time. I mean, if you're a tight end, for example, there's different blocking techniques and there's different reads on defenses and there's different releases to get out on patterns and running routes. There's all kinds of things to be considered. We just don't say, we need tight end training or we need football training. There are skills that are consistent across all football players. Well, most all of them, typically blocking, tackling, and some of the mental side of the game, but it's individualized. So think about this. If you're going to have sales training, who exactly does it apply to and why? And how can we dial in and target this training to specifically impact specific situations that they encounter? See the difference? It's a lot of work. It is a lot of work to make training effective. And that's why football is a lot of work, Have a lot of position coaches, offensive and defensive coordinators, strength coaches, nutrition coaches. You get in the NFL, they've got coaches for everything, for crying out loud, including mindset, which we don't address a whole lot in the world of sales training. Well, consideration number 2 that we really want to think about is that providing skills without any context is really going to be a problem. It's going to have very little impact overall. Let me give you a really good example. We need to bring somebody very talented in to help us learn closing skills. Closing skills, important? Yes. Should we train on them? Absolutely. When, where, how, why, those are all questions that need to be answered, but we're going to do training on closing. So we bring in someone really fantastic. Again, I can give you a couple of names. But if we train people to be better closers, and they're trying to use those skills in the wrong opportunities with the wrong audience, without decision makers, with a bad solution presentation, an inappropriate solution presentation, how effective are we going to be at closing? Right? I mean, you got to, again, you have to think in context. So sales training, specific skills without any sort of context makes no sense whatsoever. Well, of course, Kelly, we get that, but do we? Do we actually say, listen, do we have a closing problem, or are we in the wrong opportunity at the wrong time with the wrong message, with the wrong solution, without good discovery, missing key decision makers? A lot of things that go into that. Is that part of the training? If we're just training on the skill, great, needed, yes, but we can go out and apply it and still not be moving the needle in terms of closing more deals. That's where we have to make the connect, right? I can actually make you a better closer, and your closing numbers do not go up because of other challenges I'm not addressing. Consideration number 3, change. I referred to it in segment 1. Changing people's behavior is very, very difficult. Let me tell you what I see consistently when it comes to trying to develop new skills. Because most companies don't role play, they don't practice. The individual salesperson goes into the field, tries to implement a particular skill or a particular approach or a methodology, and they struggle, they stumble a little bit. It doesn't go quite well. They don't respond the way I was anticipating, and then we go right back to what we used to do. Come out of that call discouraged. We come out of that call thinking, I don't know if this is for me. I don't know if I can make this work. This is just, there's too much. And my boss is on me to sell. And that call didn't go well. Might have cost myself an opportunity. See the problem? Coaching is critical. And we'll do several episodes on sales coaching and the issues that exist there. But this is one of them. If you want to change behavior, it's a lot of work. Now, if it's a small change, if it's an incremental change, if it's consistently practiced and implemented, and we can see the results positively, then it goes fairly well and fairly quickly. But consider the approach and the perception I would have as a salesperson. I'm at an annual sales meeting. We've got a closing person come in, and they're going to teach us closing skills and techniques and ideas that go into being able to win more deals. And I take notes. I've got all kinds of notes, and I review them and I highlight them and all that. I don't have a sales coach going out into the field with me, sales leader who's supposed to coach. We don't do any practice. We don't do any role play. I'm trying to implement it the best I can. I've got some decent notes, but the forgetting curve kicks in and I miss some of the nuance. And I decide in the next meeting, I've got a solution presentation coming up. And I jump in and I use a technique or I use a skill. I use something that I've learned and it kind of falls flat. It kind of doesn't go the way I think it should. And I'm a little bit maybe embarrassed or discouraged or whatever. What do you think the odds are I'm going to implement that skill over the course of a long term, right? It's going to be a problem. Well, just another quick look at things that are wrong with how we go about doing sales training. That's why we call it Sales Untraining, your weekly sales strategy guide designed to completely rewire your sales brain. Thanks for being with me. I'll see you next time.
Sales Untraining is a production of Business Locker Room and Pod About It Productions. Music and editing by Doug Branson. To get more Kelly, visit bizlockerroom.com.